Hey, everybody, what's going on? Greetings and salutations. This is Agasicles Stanis from Gearworks.com and the E2KG Network, virtualizing the water cooler one podcast at a time. And we're here tonight with another episode of the Dark Hypotheses. And as always, I am joined by my co-worker, cohort, and co-mate. Wait, I don't think co-mate's actually a word. Anyway, I'm here with my partner.
It is now, yo.
Stalwart and ever loyal, Mr. Dave Petchy. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
Great. So tonight's a little weird. I don't know if weird's the right word. We have
That's weird. Yeah.
we have an opportunity to talk about two episodes tonight, just because of the weirdness of how scheduling for this week's podcast went down. But it's an interesting divide, and it's not one that I anticipated. So we have two episodes, episode 6 and episode 7 of season 3 of Dark Matter on the SyFy Network. The first one of which is called One More Card to Play, I believe is the name of the episode. And the second one, episode 7, which aired just this past Friday, is entitled I Wish I Could Believe You. Now, last year, Dave and I did a show on when we were both, working at Geeks Worldwide, called What You Can't See, and that was our first season doing this show, covering Dark Matter, and I was in the middle of moving last summer, so one of the things we did to for efficiency, but also to accommodate what would have surely been a number of schedule changes, was we just went to doing 2 episodes per show of the podcast. So we wanted to step away from that this year, because part of the problem last year was when you would watch 2 episodes, sometimes that 1 week delay would result in you, for me, definitely, I would forget what happened 2 episodes ago. Like I said, I was in the middle of moving. I was on the road. I didn't always have the time or the setup, to take notes on one device while I was watching the episode on another device. So, and so I guess last year we used to talk a little bit about comparing the 2 episodes. These last 2 weeks are kind of weird. And Dave and I are in the same place where we have a ton of stuff to talk about with regards to episode 6, One More Card to Play. But we're both really light on episode 7. So I think there's some reasons for that. We're going to come back to that later. We're going to try and watch the time a little bit, so we do want to talk about episode 7, but it won't take as much time. But I definitely don't want to fill up so much time with episode 6 that we completely squeeze episode 7 out. So Dave, right off the bat, any initial thoughts of why the 2 episodes are so divergent in terms of our just kind of how they preoccupy our mind space, so to speak?
So going back to the latest episode, it was a very interesting episode. I'm not going to say it was bad, and I'm not going to say it was the worst episode. It was just it's weird, which makes this podcast kind of interesting tonight too, because I feel like it was a bit kind of repetitive, and I knew what was going on that episode. It's one of those, is it a dream or is it reality? And that just kind of filled up a lot of that episode. So you only had 3 talking points that I really took away from it, other than the whole is this a dream or reality, which I felt when I was watching it on my TV, I felt like that took a half an hour of back and forth of that whole sequence. And it was cool. I think it's a traditional science fiction trope, very Inception-y. The episode 6 was great, though. Lots of stuff I want to talk about on that one. And I have a couple predictions that I've thinking about that's going to happen because of episode 6. So that's kind of my summary there.
Yeah, it's a little interesting, right? Because, you know, it was just one episode ago, maybe 2 episodes ago, where we had the time loop, right? I guess that was 3 episodes ago, actually, because Mr. Malazzi joined us on our episode 3, I think, of the podcast. So and we talked heavily about how that was just kind of a standard staple of a sci-fi, of a science fiction show. And yeah, you definitely have elements of that in I Wish I Could Believe You, and there's kind of the thing that we have in this kind of template, right, where it's always a matter of, does the character realize that it's a dream or a simulation, or you know, as Elon Musk believes that the character is inside the Matrix, right, so to speak, not a highly sophisticated computer program. So so the question, and you know, in what Mr. Malazzi and Dark Matter do is, you know, he always talks about kind of tipping it on its head. So so number one, I'll definitely say I continue to applaud this series for like taking sci-fi or science fiction staples and just gunning right at them. Right, the show doesn't shy away from them at all. There's no, we're not going to do that. It's definitively, we are going to do that, and we're going to completely tip the conventions upside down. And that happens to a certain extent in that episode. But yeah, I think one of the reasons we don't talk about it a lot, I'll just go ahead and say it here at the front end of the show, is, or don't have as much to say about it, is because it's very much a locked room episode. And we talk about that.
Yeah.
Happens a bit on the show because you have some episodes that take place entirely on the Raza. And you have some episodes, you know, where the Raza is not even traveling from one star system to the other, right? They're adrift, and there's something wrong on the ship, and they're trying to figure it out. And this is kind of similar, except it takes place on a Ferris core ship, and that just results in not a lot of movement in terms of, I'll call it the dark matter tapestry or dark matter fabric, right? Which is, I guess, a term that I'll coin to talk about this grand conspiracy that's going on through, you know, over light years of the galaxy with characters in different places. This is very much a story that takes place almost entirely within the confines of that one room that we see 6 in. And so, you know, instead of talking about things on a galactic scale, when we talk about this episode, we're just going to wind up talking about kind of what happens in that room. So that's enough on episode 7. Let's wind it back a couple weeks to episode 6. One more card to play. So so Dave, why don't you go ahead and give me your rundown with your general impressions of the episode?
I thought that one was very good. I definitely liked. It kind of had me like on the edge of my seat for a while, because I wasn't quite sure. Like, maybe you caught on quicker than me that that wasn't the real Raza, because like even to the point where like they space. So I guess I should maybe give a quick explanation. The very first scene is that Ryu is executing some family members and friends that are associated with the, what do I want to call him? The guy a couple episodes back, or that last episode, where there was a new trainee or a new graduate from the academy that tried to assassinate Ryu, and so he's trying to gather intel from them. So he's having them transported to what they believe is a detention facility, but really is probably going to be their execution. And so we see in there that the Raza crew is in there, and it's kind of surprising to see them there. And they're like, "Oh, we're here to liberate you guys, but we need your help." And so I'm thinking, okay, so the Raza's, you know, got some play in there. And then as that goes on, the Raza ends up double crossing the what do you call them again? help me out here, I guess, please. What would you call those people? The accused?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, the accused. And so they end up spacing them and taking the shuttle for themselves. And I'm still thinking in my head, yeah, the Raza might do that. And then as it goes on, I was like, okay, like, I don't think this is the Raza. This is probably like somebody else. And then it clicked to me that it's the alternative universe Raza crew. And then we see, gosh, I forget their names. The people that are, help me out. What's the female and the guy that's killed already?
Yeah. So part of the characters we see introduced in the variants that you get, which kind of informs you that you are not seeing the regular Raza crew, is that this Raza crew consists of Wexler.
That's right. Yeah, Wexler and the female whose name that I forget.
Yeah, I'm trying to fact check now. The key thing for her is, the actress is recognizable because she is because she's the actress who also played or plays Vandal Savage's daughter on Legends of Tomorrow. Was where I first saw her show up, and then she showed up on Dark Matter. Yeah, so that's Tosh.
Tosh. Okay, yeah, Tox and Wexler. Right. So that's the alternate universe crew. Please forgive us for forgetting their names. I just opened up my Dark Matter Wikipedia because
we can do better about having that during this podcast. So yes, that's Tosh, played by Jessica Sipos, and of course her brother Devin Talthard, the actress's brother Devin Talthard, played by Sean Sipos, was like I said, played Devin, who was one of the crew members of the Raza who was added in season 2, and then I don't know how to characterize how he ended up potentially met his demise near the end of that same season.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's a great because it's just a great setup, and it opens so many possibilities. You've got this whole new villain set that's just lurking, and it just makes me think of like kind of like on Sonic the Hedgehog is kind of where you have like Sonic's Shadow and Silver,
Right.
kind of rivalry going on,
So let me ask you, so we get kind of a twofer here, right? We get that that the crew of the Raza that we're seeing is actually the alternate universe's Raza crew, which we saw, I think, in season 1. But what we also get is the reveal that is who was on the Marauder,
right,
that across the dimensional portal when the Raza arrived. Now, so I was disappointed. I don't want to say I wasn't disappointed in terms of like I felt that was bad. I just had my own personal hope that the person on the Marauder was the alternate universe's Derek Moss. And so we were going to...
But here's my prediction.
Okay, go ahead.
This is all right. I don't want to steal the hypothesis of the show, but I'm hypothesizing that the season finale or close to the end of this season, alternate universe Derek Moss 1 is going to come in and be like, fools, I know how to take out this alternate universe Raza crew. I'm here to help you. That's my hypothesis. It's going to be a theory, the return of alternate universe 1.
That would be awesome if that happened. I would be quite happy. I still feel like he was just added a lot to the show, and and to the crew of the Raza as a whole. So I'm still holding out for a chance for him to come back.
Yeah. And I feel like part of it, he's got to be like a much stronger Derek Ross, like somebody that can take care of himself, and is like, you know, master of the universe. I don't know. He's going to be like the Anakin Skywalker, right? Or Luke Skywalker, you know, because the original Derek Moss, gosh, I don't know like a comparison, what to compare him to, but he's kind of like Batman without the gear. He's that rich guy.
Yeah, I can kind of see that analogy, except for his naivety. But yeah, if they want him back, so actually I would say he felt a little more Clark Kentish in his initial outing. But if alternate universe Derek Moss is more Bruce Wayne than Clark Kent, then that would be a nice contrast too, if he does come back.
Yeah. All right. So sorry to like sidetrack that thought, but I want to put that out there.
No, yeah. So as I was going through the episode, so I kind of felt like in the first 5 minutes, as you were talking about, like the introduction, right? Something to me started to feel off, and I definitely started questioning a lot of what I was seeing. Now, admittedly, with this show, I tend to question everything that unfolds on screen.
Yeah.
Right. But I initially felt like the two citizens that they recruited to help them out felt a little fishy, and I was like, are these really two like Ishida agents who have been planted amongst this group of the accused to see if they can ferret out who was really behind the assassination attempt? But then, of course, Wexler and Tosh come in on the bridge because you spent a very long time in the episode, not a long time, but you spent in the first few minutes of the episode just seeing alt universes, Portia Lynn and I can't remember 3's real name, but then the alternate, the additional the add-on alternates show up, and then we get it's so nice to see that even in the alternate universe that there is this weird kind of chemistry between Android and 3. And she mentions a line about being able to the fact that ripping his head off would require minimal effort, and then kind of repeats each fragment of the sentence. So that was really hilarious. I'm sorry, not 3, but that was Wexler. But still, the line was nice, and I love the kind of the play.
And then I think, so after that scene, it talks about they make this deal with Mikkei, and they say, okay, we're going to transport, your goods for you, but then they end up jacking their goods. And then I think it goes to the next scene is Mikkei contacts this universe's Raza crew and is like, what the heck, where's my goods? And they're like, what do you freaking mean? And then I think that they summarize that that it's possibly their alternative universe doppelgangers, and then I think after that scene, I think it goes to the scene where Andrea and Solara are like that they're going to be, or no, that's towards the end of the episode, I think, where they sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah, no. So interspersed in there is a conversation that occurs between Adrian and Solara, where Adrian starts to kind of postulate leaving the ship and the fact that being on the ship is not for him. Of course, at that point is right when 5, swings by. I think she swings by their quarters, or maybe she calls in on the comlink and tells Adrian that that they need him. Which I thought was a very interesting scene, because that's kind of the whole crux of Adrian's dialogue at the point with Solara, is that the Raza crew really doesn't need him. And in fact, I'm pretty sure it's the first time since he's been on the ship and on the series that those words have ever been uttered. Adrian, we need you. So yeah, it's a very interesting scene. And again, as always, the best scenes on this show are the ones that are kind of the smaller, intimate scenes between just two characters, and there's been a nice running dialogue and interaction between Adrian and Solara the whole time, with Solara being his bodyguard, but also being someone who's almost more like his bigger sister, even though she kind of often plays I want to say second fiddle, but is kind of following his direction, because of course he's the one who's paying her.
Yeah. So that conversation was very shocking to me, because I wasn't expecting them to leave so early on. I mean, I had my kind of assumptions that they might. It just kind of hit me. Wow, like it already happened.
Yeah, it's weird because we teeter-totter back and forth, particularly this episode more than anything, with this really reduced crew on the Raza, and as you mentioned, this episode again kind of the bottom dropped out of my heart, right? Because I was like, we're gonna go back to where it's really just like 2, 3, and 5, right? And an android, crossing the cosmos. So I don't know. So we proceed on through the episode. One of the notes I made was I was kind of surprised. I kind of had an inkling that Truffaut was going to catch on, was going to detect that there was something off about alt universe Portia Lynn, but she didn't. So that would have been kind of an interesting story twist. One of the big things that I thought too, and it wound up being the latter that happened, or the former. I was like, oh, there's 2 androids. Like, this can't end well, right? Like, either there's going to be an absolute knockdown, drag-out fight between the 2 of them, or the 2 of them are going to run into each other, and their extremely logical approaches to everything will wind up having them be the 2 who just try and talk things out. And it's that thing that actually happens near the end of the episode, although they are highly suspicious of each other. This is a thing that Zoe Palmer does so well as Android is. It's really hard to tell when she's telling the truth or lying, because the delivery is always the same, but there's always like a little something in her eye that I'd like to say, cues me in that there's some deception going on. She has this really wonderful way of doing this, like half squint, and you wonder whether she's like being deceptive. And she does that when she's playing both roles in that scene near the end. And it was very difficult for me to tell. And I love how they both came up and were so specific about the distances. That a way that they left the ships, like, I landed a shuttle 1.47 kilometers from here, and then the other android says, 1.63 kilometers. So I thought that was a wonderful scene between the 2 of them. So at any point, did you feel like this episode was one of what I think is the 8, I will start referring to them as the tales that were foretold in the I think what was episode?
Right, yeah. I think it was our first one, because they actually showed the scene of Boone shooting the android.
Oh, was that one of those? Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. Okay. So I guess I thought. I was thinking that it was the double cross.
I think it was, because going to episode 7, I mean, unless it hasn't come up yet, in episode 7, I don't think it was the double cross. At least for, I mean, it would be kind of silly now after watching episode 7 if, like, jumping ahead, if it turned out 6 was still actually bad, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's weird. So I definitely want to talk about that when we get to that. Part of me thought it was the double cross just because of obviously the Raza crew was trying to pull the alt universe Raza crew was trying to pull a double cross. and then kind of the real Raza crew kind of pulled a double cross by showing up and I guess, well, I don't know. I guess they didn't. There was that scene where they land and they meet Wexler, and Wexler claims that he has support kind of in the tree line, but then when he calls for the support, there's nobody there, and I at that point I locked in and said, okay, well that means 2 has had people take that support out, but in reality, the Alt Raza crew just abandoned him and never sent support down. So, which is kind of a double cross in itself. So I just felt like there were a lot of double crosses in this episode, and that's why I thought it was double cross. But I will also admit, I feel intuitively that the real double cross is going to be a significant event that like trust is going to be broken, and I don't feel like it's going to be something kind of small, or it's going to like set a new status quo. Is kind of the way I feel about it. Although this kind of did, I don't know. I was just all over the place.
Yeah, it's hard to say if this was it because it was kind of small, or if it's going to be something where you're going to know it's the double cross.
Right. So the note I wrote down is this may not be the double cross, but it's very Dune-like. And if you've ever read Frank Herbert's book, in addition to a lot of the iconic verbiage in there, one of the lines that is said repeatedly is this notion of plans within plans within plans. And that's kind of what this episode felt like. Everybody's plans and deception towards other parties was all very Inception-like in terms like that first level was just the surface dupe, right? But where they really got you was in the second or third level of the con. So
yeah.
I agree with you. It's unfortunate that Adrian is off the ship now. He was kind of becoming one of my favorites. But one of the best action sequences that I love from this episode was when Android fights Portia from the alternate universe. But then, of course, again, that's part of another con. So
yeah. And then I love it. So jumping ahead, I kind of love seeing 5 come into her own, because like she's becoming so aware of like things going on. She's talking to gosh, what's the lady on the other ship's name again? Tasha? No, Tosh, was it?
Right.
Yeah. And she's like, I think we should do a trade. And Tosh is like, I don't care. I'll blow you guys up anyways. And 5's like, well, I'm standing my ground, And thankfully the other android steps in and is like, all right, let's make a deal. And it's cool because it also, the alternate universe android shares the same connection with our universe's 3, how they're very close, almost like sister-like. And so it's kind of like, doesn't matter what universe you're in, some things like that, just don't change. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you could tell the emotion in alternate universes android in her eyes that she couldn't imagine seeing 3 blown to bits or anything like that.
Right. And do you mean 5?
No, because wasn't alternate universe 3 was on the Raza locked up, right?
Well, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the first episode where I liked Wexler. I've never been able to stand that guy.
I know.
I had a little more respect for him this time. I felt he was a little more level, just a little less of the unnecessary, dialogue and hitting on 2. So I did like seeing that walked back just a tad. It was there, but it was a little more nuanced and sophisticated. So I kind of like that.
And then the conversation. Oh, what happened to this universe, me? And then like, what did he do to piss you off? And he's like, well, he spaced me, so I spaced him.
Right.
And I was like, that was so great.
So one of the notes I wrote is, I felt like episode 6 was like amazingly well scripted. And it was a very clean story. It was very tight and scaled down, a little quieter, and a little more direct in its action, in comparison to kind of some of the larger galaxy-sized opuses. I don't know plural of opuses, but that get told. So I really appreciated that in the dialogue, which was admittedly sometimes one actor with themselves portraying the other version of them, was just really well done. Sarah. So Sarah continues to concern me, and I just
especially in episode 7.
Yeah, so I'm just starting to feel like if I'm too, I think I've shut that database down, right? Like it just feels it's like a holodeck just waiting to go bad.
And that's like a Star Trek thing, right? With that episode where Moriarty goes like,
right,
just he gets out.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So you're taking IT classes now, right? And you're getting databases and stuff. And one of the things, and it's not just databases, but supposedly that's what Sarah is at her core. But one of the things with databases and other software structures and components is you always worry about corruption, because when corruption happens, it frequently starts occurring and you don't know it, and it yields wonky and unreliable behavior in the systems that you're using. So what I wrote down is I'm really worried that Sarah's going to have something corrupted in her database and stuff is going to get twisted. I guess what I'm predicting is that I think she's going to try and trap someone there. When we leap ahead to episode 7, I thought we were about to see that go down there. Or her AI is just going to become too powerful, and she's going to be like, why am I letting these humans dictate the limits on my existence?
Well, we get a whole episode on that for episode 8, so
right.
We won't have to wait too long to find out.
Right. So the other thing I kind of want to see happen, I feel like there's a little deliberate shying away from, or maybe not dealing with. So we know, or I thought we knew, that continued and prolonged use of the neurolinks results in degenerative brain conditions, and that's why they had to treat 5 earlier in the season when she was overusing it. And I guess I thought in my head that it was that it's not overuse, that it's just using it at all. But maybe it has to be a certain volume of usage. But 3 to this point, as far as we can tell, hasn't really been affected by using it. So I don't know. So, at the end of the day, I'm a little worried about the introduction of the doppelgangers. I wasn't entirely clear. I guess maybe in the end it kind of came around. I wasn't entirely clear if they actually had a whole alternate Raza in that universe. But it appears like they do. So my concern is, and I talk about this most prevalently with the Flash, right? Because as much as I like the Flash on the CW, my concern was when they did it, and I feel like it bore itself out, was that time travel and poking holes in universes, on that show, I felt like just became a trope sometimes, right? And that's my concern here. I have a little bit of a concern that, like, hey, every time something goes down and it makes me suspicious, I'm always going to have to consider, it's that alternate Raza crew. And maybe that's the desired effect, but they feel like they feel like a dangling participle, right? They feel like this thing that is out there that needs to be dealt with. And I know I've said, when it comes to TV shows, like, I don't like I've watched some drama shows where, like, there's I'll just go down as for instance, like, this happens mostly with shows that I watch with my wife, right? Where something goes down and there's like a character who's threatening like one of the main characters, or somebody gets pregnant, right? either one of the characters gets pregnant or one of the characters gets somebody pregnant. And either one of those storylines, exactly, and again, there are two examples, go on forever, right? They go on the whole season. The characters show up infrequently, but it just kind of in that mode where just as you're starting to forget about them and it's not cluttering your mind, they show up. And eventually I just go, look, I just want this resolved. Like, I don't like this thing being out there. And that's kind of my concern with the alternate Raza crew, that if we see them infrequently, then you're just going to kind of always be like, just do something with them, right? They need to be gotten rid of. They need to be put in jail. Like, I can't just have them running around the universe randomly, right, and not being dealt with directly.
Yeah. No, that's kind of a wonder of mine too. I don't want this to turn into kind of like the whole show is going to be about the Raza versus Ryu versus Ferris Corp versus alternate universe Raza. Although at the end of the show, I was kind of thinking, oh, is this going to be kind of like they're making their own Legion of Doom like team up going on right now, and then so somehow like they're gonna have to take care of all of them at once. There's going to be this huge thing, and then going into episode 7, I believe they talk about, should we officially side with the Nikkei as this war continues? And you could just tell, 3 is thinking about it, and it just makes me wonder, they've got a lot of enemies. The Raza can't handle everybody on their own, and they're making enemies not even because they want to make enemies. So I think, the Raza is gonna need, help because, their spectrum of problems is growing.
No, yeah, right, absolutely. So yes, as we try and wrap this segment up, and that'll give us about 20 minutes to talk about episode 7. So was there a little relationship, like romantic thing, slightly hinted at between Adrian and Five?
The kiss, right? That's what you're talking about?
Well, even leading up to that, like I felt like the kiss was almost kind of walked it back a little bit and made it a little more innocent, but leading up to that, it felt like there was a little flirtation, attractiveness.
I felt like it's finally Five's, first time we've seen her think about a romantic relationship. Because, we saw 3 and 1 kind of had something going on.
You mean 2 and 1, right?
Yeah, 2 and 1. Sorry, 2 and 1. 3 and Sarah. Nix and Ryu. Trying to think of the other relationships that we've, maybe the android and that one other android guy.
Yeah, right. So we've had a few, right? We've had, like you mentioned, a couple. There's been, the 2 and 3. There's been, I don't know. So there's been a few ships. There's a little flirty thing that goes on between 3 and Android, which I errantly mentioned, but it does different scenes. So yeah, this is the first time that there's a hint of them shipping 5, and it's weird for me because I know Jodelle Ferland is not like 17, right? But referring to her as kid, and it's just a little. Whereas Adrian is quite clearly an adult, right? So, so I don't know. It was a little weird trying to get my head wrapped around. Well, exactly how old is she supposed to be?
Yeah.
But of course, people today are in their mid-20s and still aren't really out in the workforce and stuff, so it could be referred to as kid. So I don't know. It was neat. Once I kind of pushed the age thing aside, So yeah, so it was fine. Interesting. So at the end of the day, I just felt this was just one of the best scripted episodes in terms of the dialogue.
Yeah, and there was some funny Android scenes thrown in there. I thought it was a really good episode. I liked it.
Yeah,
and many possibilities could come out of it too down the road.
Yes, right. And the other thing that I liked about it, it was just kind of a different drumbeat. Whereas, the week before, what I had tweeted out was that giving a nod to Zoe and Zoe Palmer and Aisha Issa, who I felt like kind of stole the show in episode 5. But this episode 6, One Last Card to Play, was much more balanced, right? There was a little bit of something for everyone to kind of showcase themselves, whereas, usually in a sci-fi show, there are kind of multiple episodes in a row that focus on one character or a pair of characters. But this one kind of gave everybody like a little bit to play with. So it was pretty neat. I really liked episode 6. So let's go ahead and move on to episode 7. I Wish I Could Believe You.
The other thing is, I don't have much to talk about it, but we did kind of glance over like the very early Ryu scene, I think, where he talked about, there wasn't much to say about it other than he's going more down the dictator track.
Yeah, but it's and again, he walks away from that scene, and I'm like unclear on where he really stands. Like he says to Teku, look, your counsel is always welcome, right? That's why I keep you here. But then he kind of, he extends with one hand and then slaps him in the face with the other. Even if your advice is idealistic and kind of weak, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that relationship stands out. It seemed like there was a bit of a bridging between the two, whereas, from the previous episode, when he advised him to take on, that he needed to go defend the recognized home world of the Ishida Empire, and he lost a large amount of his armada. I was like, okay, so Teku is clearly on his way towards getting executed. So
I wasn't thinking that, but okay.
But there was a little bit of a bridge back in episode 6. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. So
I also want to say I'm kind of annoyed with kind of these Ryu scenes. I'd rather have a dedicated Ryu episode with like maybe 10 minutes of the Raza at the end. Just like, I feel like, okay, let's get all the Ryu stuff out unless it's directly related to the Raza storyline.
Yeah, I think, and I'll contend, I think that's a bit of us still not settling into Ryu as Emperor, right? Not the way we were envisioning and hoping for it to be. Ryu, for us, and I reckon for another chunk of Dark Matter fans, was one of the most popular and well-liked characters of the Raza, as 4. And there had always been, I had always had this hope and expectation that, when Mr. Melazzi talks about his 5-year arc, that was going to be one of the key elements of the redemption story would be that Ryu would eventually rise to reclaim the Empire, utilizing a loyal band of military generals and admirals who would, lend their ships to his cause, and that the Raza would operate independently and be his ally in that fight. But I had always imagined that he would come to that altruistically, not in the kind of twisted, murderous manner in which he did. So the way it went down, it was much earlier on. It was much less altruistic. And it was kind of difficult to tell who was the bad guy. I'll say for myself, right, I'm still trying to deal with Ishida the Emperor. And at the end of the day, it definitely feels like him becoming Emperor is a net loss to us, who who see that it was a better thing for him to just be a member of the Raza. So yeah, it's tough. It's going to be interesting to see how he settles out, and if he ever gets to a point. And even today, like, I really don't know. I guess that's my big thing, right? I really don't know that he's a bad guy or that he's an enemy of the Raza. They definitely have conflicting interests, but I don't know that I look at him as evil. And so, you know, on one hand, that may be incentivized. You know, Mr. Malazzo may feel like what he needs to do is make Ryu like really twisted, right? In order to entirely telegraph, like, oh no, this guy is like bad now. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that whole thing goes. So, you know, so in this episode, like you mentioned, we have the whole thing where they have captured Six after releasing what appears to be a neurotoxin on the mining colony that he was on. Although there are a couple times in the episode where it's referred to as biological, so I guess you never really know for certain. But you know, the I don't know. I was about to. Yeah, that was actually what was in his head. So even as I'm trying to talk this, I'm getting confused when I'm about to say something, and then I go, "Oh, wait a second! No, that was part of the simulation." So, so we know that one of the colonies is hit, and that a Ferris core ship comes by and scoops up Six, and that's when we see him in the treatment room, kind of with people, you know, sifting around inside his head, trying to extract secrets. And that's kind of the general plot of the episode is Six figuring out a way to liberate himself from the dream trap that they've essentially kept him in. So, so I don't know. What are you thoughts or general notes from this episode, Dave?
So the things that I took away is Six was married, and he has a little boy. Wow. And at the very end of the episode, he finds out that his wife has remarried, and they're very happy, which is like, wow. It's kind of interesting also to note, my other note that I had was that the Raza was working with the GA officer Anders, which was pretty good. They've got him on their side. It seems like that they're kind of working together, because they both had shared interest to find Six.
Yeah. Although where it leads me is, again, I'm kind of unclear on what the status quo is in terms of their relationship with Anders, right? You know, the last time I saw him, I guess what I would say is what I thought was going on was that he was still GA, that he had given 3 a pass, but I didn't have the impression that that would continue, whereas in this episode, the interaction and dialogue with him is almost like he's like the Raza's inside man in the GA.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Are we thinking he's just fully flipped over, and now he's going to kind of help the Raza from the inside, or
it might just be mutual interest, maybe. At least at this point, you know.
Yeah, just doing whatever with it to help look out for Cal, I guess. Or Six.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, you were. Continuing.
Oh yeah. So then my other note on this episode was that Six is back with the crew and looks like he's going to be back with them for a while. I was not expecting that. I was totally expecting something way out of proportion.
Yeah, I think your hypothesis for
was wrong.
Yeah, was well, it was just off by time, right? Which I think you said you were expecting that he would show up. He would return to the Raza crew as part of the finale or the build up to the season finale.
Right. But I was thinking, because of him being this Agent Zero thing, I was like, which I'm still very confused. If he is this Agent Zero, like, why would he be like, you know, not willing to give that information to Ferris? And why would he try to find the location of Commander, what's his name? You know, so it doesn't seem like he's like this evil agent that I was starting to think that he was going to be. Well, unless that's yet to be seen. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think he was looking. He was trying to get the location. Well, I think he was just trying to get the location of his own ship, and where he was, so that he could tell the Raza where he was to come pick him up. So.
Oh, and then my last point was, sorry, at the very end of the episode, there's this weird conversation between Sarah and 3, and it's so good how Joseph Malozzi did it. They just kind of zoom in on her face, where she's like, "Oh, she's got something bad planned." And then
the 3 and I mean, is this the scene with Sarah and 2?
Yeah, sorry, Sarah and 2. I've been getting them mixed up. So yeah, and then I think she says like, you know, something about like 2 says like Ryu remembered like 2 doing something bad and unforgivable, and like that was like kind of a shock. I was like, what was it that 2 could have done? Did it involve Sarah?
So this is so I think you have a couple, 2 of the scenes mixed up. So there was in the first scene it's 3 and Sarah, and 3 mentions that you said Ryu, right? So 3 mentions that when Ryu got his memories back, when 4 got his memories back.
No. When they're sleeping in the bed,
right?
Sarah and 2 are talking. And
Sarah and 3. Sarah and Marcus are in bed together.
Oh, sorry, yeah. 3, yeah. Marcus, 3, and Sarah are in bed. That's the scene that I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and they're talking about, you know, how 3 has done something super bad that Ryu had mentioned, and Sarah was just kind of like, oh, don't worry about it, blah, 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 blah. I wish you were here longer.
Right, and as 3's talking through it, I think you're driven to have the impression that only he and Ryu know about it. Excuse me, but when Sarah rolls over and has her back to him, her smile fades, and there's a slight expression of sorrow or something. But I guess I feel like she clearly knows what it is that 3 did, that 4 was avoiding talking to him about. And then, as you mentioned, then we go on and then we have a follow-up scene with her and 2, where 2 gives the appearance that she's just checking in with her because she considers Sarah as a passenger on board her ship. And as the ship's captain, she's responsible on checking in on everyone's welfare and well-being. And, you know, what Sarah communicates is that, you know, this is great, but it isn't enough, right? So there's one of the trigger lines, and I'm like, computer-based AI mixed in with human feelings who feels like their existence isn't sufficient. Okay, this is the AI that gets too big for their britches and decides that humans are not worthwhile. Right? It takes over the ship, right? Or something. So they definitely sowed those seeds there. So yeah, it's very interesting. But I think then the really weird thing is, right, then you have a scene at the very end where Android wakes up out of her recharge routine. And of course, I still have my eye on the Android because I feel like she is this potential conduit for Sarah to exploit a vulnerability, and transfer her consciousness into the Android. So we have this scene where Android wakes up from her recharge routine and walks around to every crew member's quarters while they're sleeping. Creepy. And
creepy.
It just looks in on everyone else, but when she gets to 3's room, pulls a gun on him. And looks like she contemplates shooting him, but eventually puts the sidearm away and goes back to her recharge thing. So again, lots of possibilities here, right? Again, maybe it was Sarah who was periodically extending her consciousness and taking over the Android for small periods of time. And maybe she doesn't. When she does that, she doesn't have access to the Android's full range of memory, so she didn't know. She didn't know what room 3 was in. So what she was doing was kind of going throughout the whole ship and checking each sleeping area to see until she finally found 3. But it's a host of other possibilities too, right? Maybe that's her, and maybe again because we have this play with time in the show, and so you never really know when something has started. It's possible she's been doing this every night since they came back up out of space. Maybe it's maybe it's one of those things where, and I'm sure we've seen it in other stories where, like, every day this one character contemplates killing another, and every day they tell themselves to give it more time or something. So it's been very interesting seeing how that plays out.
Quick question for you: what do you think 3 could have done that could have pissed her off that much to point a gun at his head?
I don't know. Well, see, this is the risky thing, right? Because of course the two things could be completely unrelated on this show, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the only thing that occurred to me is if I go back to this thing of where, but I thought they already disproved that 3 didn't kill Derek Moss's fiancée, right?
Right.
So that was the only thing I considered during this episode, that maybe that's what maybe he did actually kill her.
I mean, that could be it. My other guess, which is like something that would be kind of like obvious, like, as they say, there's nothing more scary than a woman's scorn. So maybe he cheated on her when she was in that stasis pod, or before that. I mean,
I don't know that she would have felt that. One of my questions, I guess, is so I think what we saw portrayed out in the flashback scenes is that when other people landed on the planet and were coming for him. Well, I was going to say that I thought what she told him was just to go and leave her, and that she would be fine as long as he wasn't there. But clearly he did something to her to get her and put her in the stasis pod, right? So I don't know. I don't know if he fled when people first came and then went back and got her and put her into the stasis pod, or what. So I don't know. It's very difficult to tell, especially when, like I said, you have the dialogue with Sarah, and then also the scene with the android. And again, you would think that they're both related, but they could definitely that could definitely be a con, right? We could definitely be getting duped into thinking that, and the potential is that they're not related at all. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he could have done.
Oh man! So what else do you want to talk about for this episode? That's the most interesting points that I thought.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I guess my only other thing would be I'd go back to what you mentioned with 6, and he, Commander Neiman of Ferris Corps keeps referring to him as Agent Zero. One of the things that crossed my mind was, and there's the whole thing of, does that mean he's a sleeper agent and he's going to be triggered to execute that mission when he, smells a particular smell or hears a set of keywords or something? But one of the things that occurred to me is, so that colony was hit with a neurotoxin, and who
launched it too? Because right.
Yeah, and there's, like I said, and you connect that to the thing of him being referred to as Agent Zero, and then there were all the medical tests. Again, a large part of those were fake, but when he wakes up on the real Raza, Zoe says that that android says that there's something wrong with him. I thought there was something wrong with him. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I guess one of my thoughts was that it'd be kind of weird, but maybe not. Was we don't really know that he wasn't the source of the neurotoxin,
right?
That potentially he's been genetically altered in some way, and maybe he actually gives the neurotoxin off. An easier throw would be that he knows how to, make chemical munitions or something. So, but I guess that was the one thought that I had, is that actually he's the biological weapon. And then I also, when he gets shot, and again, that's in kind of the dream world and not in reality, I kept wondering, is he going to pop back up off the floor? And I did consider if he is one of the, I don't know what you call him, one of the artificial life forms that Will Wheaton's character has created, that he's another variant of something akin to 2.
Oh, 6.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be trippy.
Yeah. Right. All right, man. Anything else that you want to talk about with these 2 episodes? We have we basically put our hour in.
Yeah, it's just not a lot of talking points left for the last episode.
Yeah, and again, and it wasn't a bad episode, right? I enjoyed 6 as a standalone character, kind of working that all out in his mind, and seeing the reveal. So that was neat. But at the end of the day, like I said, it all takes place in the confines of that one room and in his head to a large extent. And so, not a bad episode, but there's just not a whole ton of impact and ramification to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, that is going to do it for us for another episode of the Dark Hypotheses, the flagship entertainment podcast on the E2KG Network, because it's the only entertainment show that we have right now. But hopefully we'll be expanding upon that as we continue throughout the summer. So thanks so much for joining in. Thanks a lot, Dave, for being here on the episode as always.
Yeah. Thanks. If you guys want to find me, I'm at comicbookguy90 on Twitter. Love to hear what people think of our show so far. If there's anything that we haven't been talking about that you'd want to hear us talk about, message me or let Giscles know. This is a community, and we're here to, kind of talk about what we think, and we'd love to hear about what other fans think.
Yeah, man. Well said. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in. Whether you swung by the live show, because actually, in my extreme exhaustion, I actually forgot to pop the YouTube chat window out and take a look at it, or if you happen to swing by and watch the archive version. Oh crap! That's bad. And again, I apologize because I just, like I said, I'm dying here. So
I don't think we'll be meeting Wednesday because we covered 2, so we'll be back the following Wednesday for episode 8, the Sarah's AI episode.
All right, we're very good. We're in the clear. This is an evening that Mr. Malazzi did not drop into the chat room because he's done that 2 episodes. So that's the bullet on that one. So we will not be on the air this Wednesday with a live show. We'll be kind of sort of taking a week off, but not really, because like Dave said, we covered 2 episodes tonight. So we should be back on like the 26th of June with the live show to cover episode 8. So thanks again, everybody, for joining in. That's going to do it for us tonight. We are out of here.